Good afternoon and welcome to our City Council meeting tonight, February 21st, 2012, our special meeting tonight to hear a report by Mr. Giannacco. We're going to go ahead and begin with our flag salute, and Dr. Jones will lead us in our invocation. Mr. McKinley?
Did you want to call the roll?
Go ahead.
Mayor Clerk Silva? Here. Mayor Pro Tem McKinley?
Here.
Councilmember Jones?
Here.
Councilmember Bankhead?
Here.
Councilmember Whitaker?
Here.
Would you pray with me, please? Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you for the day. Thank you for the wonderful place we live. Thank you for bringing us together to hear the report of Mr. Giannacco. May we all leave here better people than we arrived. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me with patriotism and pride as we say the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag and to our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome, and we gather today to listen to a report that has been asked for us, a report that's very important to our community. And before we get to our business, I wanted to say a few things. First, I'd like to welcome you. I know that we have people from all walks of life here in Fullerton, different parts of our city, even out of our city, that this is an important report that means so much to so many. In this room, in our council chambers, we do have certain rules that I'd like to ask you to follow. Those rules would be that we follow the protocol of the council, which is that we are civil, that we listen, that we follow the decorum that is so important for us to be able to hear this report. The council needs to hear this report in order to ask the questions that are necessary. It's important that you hear the report, and it's important that when we get to our public comments that each person is able to speak and that we're able to listen. One of the things that you've seen in this council and throughout the city is we have differing opinions. You have differing opinions, I'm sure, with not only your family members, with your neighbors. And one of the great things about living in America and our democracy is that we communicate, we listen, and that we're able to make sure that each person has their time and their public comments. So as we get to that, I'm going to ask you to allow people to speak, to listen to them, and that as we hear the report, and I can assure you the council members have not heard this report. We will be hearing it as well as the same time you are. As the report is given, we need to be able to hear what Mr. Giannacco says. If for any reason it gets to a point that we cannot hear and that there is interruption, I will have to, and I will have to ask that we will recess the chambers. We will have staff stay in and media, because this report is important to our community and we need to be able to hear it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Joe Fells, who will be giving us our introduction here.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief opening comments. As you know, we've retained the services of the Office of Independent Review, headed by Mr. Giannacco, for several aspects of this case. This is the first of two reports which we'll be hearing. The second report is the overall observations on the police department policies and procedures. We anticipate that will be sometime in April. Tonight's procedure, we will ask Mr. Giannacco for his report. We return to the council for questions and comments. Following that will be public comments, and immediately wrapping up after public comments, Mr. Giannacco will be meeting members of the press and the media in the parking lot following his presentation. So with that, I'd turn the floor over to Mr. Giannacco.
Good afternoon, members of council and the people of the city of Fullerton. As you know, my name is Michael Giannacco, and I'm here prepared to provide what I've called an interim report regarding the issues surrounding the death of Kelly Thomas. And the reason it's an interim report is because there's more to be said about some of the issues surrounding that tragic death and circumstance. The reason that we have not completed our report is because we haven't quite completed our investigation. There still remains ongoing issues regarding the internal affairs investigation. We expect that the investigation itself regarding the internal affairs investigation will be completed by next week. We will then spend a week or two writing the report and then start submitting the results and recommendations and findings of the internal affairs investigation. And just so that everyone understands, the internal affairs investigation is looking into whether or not the officers involved in this incident violated any policies of the Fullerton Police Department or the City of Fullerton. We have conducted a number of interviews relating to that investigation. We're now in close to 30 interviews that have been conducted with regard to that. We have a couple more to do, and then we'll be done with that investigative process. As you also know, there's currently criminal charges filed against 2 of the officers in Fullerton. And since that investigation remains ongoing, because our internal affairs investigation remains ongoing, what we report on today will not be focusing on the incident, the force incident per se, but we'll be talking about and making conclusions regarding other issues that have been raised by the public's interest in this case and which we can segregate and discuss without compromising either the internal affairs investigation or the criminal case that is ongoing. So, that being said, we are here today, or I'm here today with my colleague Steve Walsh, who is a retired Treasury agent and who has been working on the case with me. We are here today to give an interim report regarding issues that we can talk about and will be talking about. This is an attempt to begin the dialogue and to provide insight and transparency into some of the issues that have been circulating. For a lot of good reasons, there has been no explication publicly of some of this information, and there's a result in a lot of speculation about some of these issues. And our effort and our work has been to try and provide some transparency, some insight, and perhaps begin the dialogue towards closure regarding some of these issues. I should say from the outset that, at least as to the 4 issues I'll be talking about today, we found no evidence of intent by the police department to deceive or falsify, but do offer recommendations on 2 of the issues, at least 2 of the issues, that in our view, if followed and adopted by the department and by the city, would improve its processes. The first issue that I would like to talk about is an issue that has been raised publicly by a number of individuals, and that is the circumstances surrounding the police response on July 5th of 2011. Some have speculated that, in fact, there really wasn't a call for service that night, and so we researched this issue to learn whether or not there was a call for service, how that call for service was received, what was said in the call for service, and how the police responded to the call for service. We didn't rely on Fullerton police reports or Fullerton internal investigations to make our conclusions. We went to the raw data. By that I mean we actually listened to the recording of the call for service. And there is a recording of the call for service. Our independent review of that recording indicated that a call was made on July 5th to an FPD dispatcher regarding an individual who had been observed by the female caller. The caller is recorded as stating that the individual was, quote, roaming the parking lot, quote, looking in cars, and, quote, pulling on handles. The caller indicated that she knew the person being observed as Kelly, no last name, and said the person was next to the bus station. The caller indicated that she observed that the individual was not wearing a shirt and wearing a backpack. The FPD records, and these are the raw records, not reports, indicate that officers were dispatched to the location shortly after the call was received. We went beyond that and located and interviewed the caller. The caller indicated that she was in the parking lot next to the bus station and talking with her husband on her cell phone when she observed the individual she knew from prior contacts as Kelly. She stated that she called police dispatch and related her observations as indicated on the recorded phone line. We also reviewed an audio of one of the responding officers' digitally activated recorders. As council knows, the policy of the Fullerton Police Department is for when officers are responding to citizen contacts, they are to activate the digitally activated recorder that they carry on their belt. Our review of that contemporaneous digitally activated recorder indicates that the officers arrived at the location and asked a female, we don't know if it was a caller, but asked a female if she had seen a male with no shirt in the area. The audio indicates that the female informed the officer that she had and pointed out his direction of travel. Later, the audio picks up part of the conversation between one of the responding officers and Mr. Thomas. During that conversation, Mr. Thomas is told by a Fullerton officer that they had received a call indicating Mr. Thomas had been trying to open car doors. So with regard to this issue, OIR Group has concluded there was in fact a call for service made to the Fullerton Police Department on July 5th, 2011, and that police arrived at that location in response to a call rather than initiated contact just on behalf of the department. The second issue that we were asked, looked at is another issue that has come to the public consciousness and has raised a number of questions, and that is the contents of the backpack. Official reports indicated on the date of the incident that Mr. Thomas was wearing a backpack and that items located during the search of that backpack became part of the officer's inquiry of Mr. Thomas. Some have questioned the legitimacy of those reports, so we then again independently examined this issue. Our first thing that we looked at is a review of the Orange County Transit Authority videotape. And if you look at that videotape, you can see that Mr. Thomas is wearing a backpack at the time he is initially approached by two Fullerton police officers. A review of the audio of the digitally activated recording further indicates the officer asked Mr. Thomas if he could search the backpack to see if there was anything in the backpack with his name on it, and Mr. Thomas agreed to allow the backpack to be searched. The audio from the recording further reveals that one of the responding officers verbally indicated that the backpack contained mail relating to an attorney. At that point, the officer is on tape as stating that he is concerned that Mr. Thomas may have property that did not belong to him and radios dispatch to learn if that attorney had reported stolen mail. Before dispatch can respond to that request, the officers initiated the force incident, and there was no further response from dispatch on that issue. The night of July 5th, the backpack was taken into evidence, and the contents were inventoried and photographed, and we have reviewed those photographs. That photograph indicates that the backpack did contain mail addressed to an attorney. Subsequently, it was learned that the attorney to whom the mail was addressed had discarded that mail. So in fact, the mail was not stolen. That being said, the officers on scene would not have known that. That only comes out as a result of the subsequent investigation. The inventory further located a passport, employee identification, and other items apparently belonging to another individual, not the attorney and not Mr. Thomas. It was learned through the investigation that that person had left his backpack with those items at the nearby train station. And when he went back to retrieve it, the backpack had gone missing. We will never learn for certain how it was that Mr. Thomas came into possession of that backpack. But what we can say is that there's no evidence, in fact the evidence is to the contrary, that Mr. Thomas stole the attorney mail or that he stole the backpack. At worst, Mr. Thomas retrieved what appeared to be a lost or discarded backpack and then walked with it for a couple days. So that's the second issue. The third issue has to do with the booking photo of Mr. Thomas that was released about a week and a half after the incident. The booking photo is of a 2009 arrest by Fullerton Police Department. And there was a media request of the department a week and a half or so after the incident to search booking photographs and to provide booking photographs of any earlier arrests of Mr. Thomas. the department agreed and did provide a booking photo to media outlets relating to a 2009 arrest. And at least one outlet did publish that photo. Shortly thereafter, there was concern that the booking photo that had been released may not have been that of Mr. Thomas, but of another individual. The other concern that was related to this one was that the department had released a photograph of another person in an effort to present Mr. Thomas in an unflattering or unfavorable light. This is the area that was the most concerning to us and the one we spent a good deal of time on. First, we examined the audio-digital activated recorder of the FPD officer who made the trespass arrest in 2009. A review of that audio indicates the person at the place of arrest identified himself as Kelly Thomas. Later on tape, the person talked to by the officer provides a date of birth identical with Mr. Thomas's known date of birth. We also reviewed the audio and visual of the individual brought into the Fullerton jail of the man who had identified himself as Kelly Thomas. The individual is heard in the jail again identifying himself as Kelly Thomas. He's providing a telephone call to jail personnel because he's entitled to a phone call. He is heard providing that number. Our review of that number indicates that the number does come back to Mrs. Thomas's number, and he is heard identifying somebody as mom on that audio tape. We also took a look at the fingerprints that were taken that night, compared them to a known fingerprints of Mr. Thomas, sent them to an independent fingerprint examiner to determine if there was a match, and if in fact there was a match. Based on this and other evidence that we obtained during our investigation, we concluded unequivocally that the individual photographed in 2009 is that of Mr. Kelly Thomas. But that did not end our inquiry. We have another question, and that question was it advisable for the police department to release this booking photo considering the circumstances surrounding that case? Traditionally, when booking photo requests have been made, the department generally does release booking photos when a media representative has asked for the release of the photograph. But that generally involves somebody who has been arrested by the Fullerton Police Department, is in Fullerton's custody or in the sheriff's custody. And generally speaking, the department has responded by acceding to that request. Our group is generally a proponent of transparency and release of that information. But in this case, circumstances had changed by the time the request for the booking photo had come out. By that I mean we no longer were talking about, and the public was no longer talking about, and the media was no longer interested in a 2009 arrest of Mr. Thomas. What they were looking at was to try and develop information surrounding Mr. Thomas, who had expired by then and is essentially a potential victim of police brutality. That is a different situation. I think, in our view, the calculus about whether or not to release that photo should have been different. In our view, we think that consideration should have been given before releasing the video to these other factors. We think that perhaps the family should have been brought into the discussion before the booking photo was released. All that being said, there is no current written policy at Fullerton regarding this issue. And one of our recommendations on a going forward basis is to develop policy in which the factors that I have talked about be thought about, be considered, and be incorporated into a written policy so that on a going forward basis there is more guidance provided to the department on this very important issue. Because what you ended up having in this case regarding this issue is you had a situation in which not only was there skepticism about the wrong man being identified as Kelly Thomas, but even if that had not been raised, even if, as we now know, that it was Mr. Thomas, there still is the inference that could be drawn and has been drawn that the reason that this booking photograph was released was to portray Mr. Thomas in a negative light. I have looked at hundreds and hundreds of booking photos, and I have yet to find one booking photo that places anybody in a flattering light. And for that reason, I think other considerations ought to go into this calculus on a going forward basis, and that's why we advocate the development of such policy. The final issue that I'm prepared to talk about this evening has to do with information about officer injuries. Shortly after the incident, the police department reported to the media that 2 of its officers had suffered possible broken bones as a result of the encounter. Some media outlets published this information to indicate that officers had in fact received broken bones. Later, the department informed some media outlets that in fact the officers had not apparently broken any bones. The correction caused some media members of the public to question the veracity of the department and created a belief by some that the department intentionally tried to exaggerate the officers' injuries in an effort to create sympathy for them. Our group has reviewed some of the medical records, and in both cases, there is some documentation indicating possible fractures. That information ended up not bearing out, and while there was some other treatment that one of the officers had to undergo, apparently there were no actual fractures. And here really brings another issue to the forefront, and one I think is worthy of further deliberation and consideration by the police department and by city leaders. And that is the question of how much information to release after a high-profile incident and when. This issue has bedeviled law enforcement, not just the city of Fullerton, for a long time. There is clearly inherent tension between the public's legitimate interest in learning initial facts versus the potential that preliminary information gathered early in the process may not prove to be accurate. As in this case, while there are documents that indicate that treating physicians had not ruled out possible fractures to the officer at the time this information was disclosed, the eventual diagnosis was apparently there were no broken bones. In our view, it would have been advisable in this case to do one of 2 things. Either delay the release of information about this issue in diagnoses were more definitive, or to expressly make clear to the public that the information was extremely tentative and subject to further assessment by doctors. A side issue, but important issue, is sort of the intimation, although this wasn't stated, but the intimation and inference that somehow these injuries to the officers were caused by Mr. Thomas. And it should be made clear that OR Group is not indicating that the injuries suffered were at the hands of Mr. Thomas. Rather, the injuries were obtained during the force incident with Mr. Thomas and may have been suffered while the application of force by officers was being committed. In any event, secondly, once it was learned that subsequent medical information had failed with certainty to detect the existence of broken bones, in our view, the department would have been better served to produce a clarifying public statement about the new facts. Our group recommends that the controversy surrounding this issue be used by the department and the city as a stark reminder of the need to, 1, get the information right, 2, if there is a felt need to produce information immediately, expressly alert the public about the tentative nature of the information, and finally, if it turns out that the initial information is inaccurate, to disseminate corrections or clarifications quickly and broadly. While there is criticism here by our group about that decision, it should not be taken as an affirmation that this was intentionally done or that this was deceptively done, if this was falsely done. That's not what our evidence or the evidence has suggested in this case. As to the last 2 issues, while OR Group has offered recommendations on a going forward basis, it should be taken, these recommendations should be taken in that spirit, as a way in which the department and the city can improve and use this terrible tragedy as a learning experience rather than simply moving on with future matters. And that is in the spirit in which these recommendations have been made. I thank Council for their attention to our report. We will obviously be having more to say about issues germane to the actual incident in the future. We will be able to report at some point on the results of our internal affairs investigation, but at this point are prepared to take questions relating to the issues on which we have reported.
Okay, before we start the questions, I want to thank the audience for listening so attentive, and I know that everybody appreciates that, and thank you for your report. And from the council, and just so the public understands, is the council will be asking questions of Mr. Giannakko, and then he will leave and be available, I understand, in the parking lot for the media to ask questions and to meet with, and then we will open up the public comments here in the chambers. Council members, do we have any council members that have questions of Mr. Giannakko? Dr. Jones?
I think you mentioned that in very inflammatory incidents of great concern, the media asks for booking photos. In this case, there was no booking photo, was there? Because he had not been booked. So the only booking photos we had were from a previous arrest, was that correct?
Yes.
Now, so that was in 2009.
Yes.
Do you know if there was more than one booking photo taken in 2009, or was it the only photo that was released to the public?
There was another photo taken that same night by Orange County Sheriff's Department, because eventually Mr. Thomas was transferred to the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and there is that photo. There are other photos, but Fullerton's only photo was the one that I'm describing.
So the one that was released by the Fullerton Department was the only one they had, but later another photo was given of the 2009 arrest by the Sheriff's Department. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if that was disseminated by Fullerton. I have reviewed that photograph.
I see. But theoretically, it wouldn't necessarily be in the Fullerton's hands. Is that right? It would be in the Sheriff's Department's possession.
That's a Sheriff's Department booking photo, and I'm focusing our report on the release of the Fullerton.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce?
Yes, Mr. Giannakko, question that I had was involving the call, the data that was received on the call. Was that observation by the lady who made the call, was that confirmed by any other witness? Were there any other parties who observed the same thing? In your investigation, did you uncover whether anyone corroborated that?
There has been some corroboration during the DA interviews of the numerous eyewitnesses of some of that, but I think that she may have been the first person. She was, as far as I know, the only person to formally alert the Fullerton Police Department of her observations.
I'm referring specifically to looking in cars and pulling door handles. There was corroboration on that?
Not particularly with regard to that. I'd have to go back and look at, research all of the witness statements. There were 200 or so that were taken. But this was contemporaneous with her call. She was observing this information at the time she was making the call.
A second question involving the dispatch on this is that there were many efforts made to request public information regarding that call. All those were denied. There was no apparent existence of such a call in the logs at the department. What did you find as regards that?
What I've found is that if the Public Records Act request was for a 911 call, this was not a 911 call. This was a request for service in which the caller called dispatch directly. So because of the way in which it was asked, the information may not have been produced. And if the request had been possible burglary or car burglary investigation, I'm not sure that the call would have been cataloged under that. But the frank matter is that we have obtained and have reviewed the actual call for service, and it's tape recorded, and it's there, and we've talked to her, and she corroborates what she said on the call.
How was the call cataloged? What was the identifier on that call?
I'm not sure exactly how it was cataloged, but I can get back to counsel if you'd like.
One other concern that I had involving the contents of the backpack, one of the concerns that I made public was that the report that I received was that items were found in the backpack, including mail that appeared to be taken from mailboxes up and down the street. What I've heard expressed here is that it was mail from a single source. Was that mail opened, crumpled, otherwise processed, or was it unopened mail?
The mail was opened.
And then the first that I've heard in this report of the contents, the other contents, a passport, and what else did you say was part of that?
Employee identification.
Was there an attempt made to contact that person?
Absolutely. That person was contacted, verified how he had misplaced his backpack, and that information comes from that individual. He later identified his backpack and the contents.
Did he refer to that as being lost or stolen?
He said he'd left it behind. He said he'd left it behind.
The last portion of this that I'm very concerned about was the report that I received originally as to broken bones, that there was a tremendously fierce fight and that officers may have suffered broken bones. Now, within days after the event, that was also, you mentioned media companies that made that representation, but it was also made by FPD spokesperson multiple times. And I'm just wondering where the officers were sent. I don't have the detail where they were sent to have those injuries reviewed medically, because I would guess that if a doctor feared that there was a fracture or a broken bone, that they would order an x-ray, and that usually the response time on such is very rapid. How do you address that issue?
Well, as I said, the initial information from the intake and some of the doctor's initial assessments did suggest that there may have been fractures. But down the line, as further treatment was sought and received, turns out that there probably weren't broken bones. One of the officers did have to receive some surgery, though.
So the timeline on this is a problem for me, because this information was relayed to me the next morning, and it would be a matter of an hour or two at most before the reality of that would have been known.
I'm not sure when the information circled back to the police department. There are some privacy issues. Medical treatment issues do not often flow back as quickly as you suggest to the police department. That being said, it's a problem for us too, in that the initial information was X, it ends up turning out Y, and in our view there should have been a broad dissemination of Y when Y was learned, Councilmember.
I agree very much with your conclusion that it's important to get the information right and not to release unless it is right. And I still have some very large problems with this. I will want to follow up with you on several areas.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Sure.
Any other council members?
Yes, Mr. Giannaco, I would highly recommend that you write something in the periodicals for police, because not only our incident, but the Riverside incident, now the Orange County Sheriff incident, all of them, I think what our friends in the media immediately want information. We try to be responsive, but it's much better to ensure that information is correct and then put it out, and then you don't have to backtrack so much. But it happens to a lot of agencies, and I really appreciate your conclusions, because I've run across that myself.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Dick?
Two questions. You mentioned the telephone call was not 911.
That's right.
You said it was directly to dispatch.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the telephone? Excuse me. What is it? I don't know the telephone number for the dispatch. Does the average person know what the dispatch number is?
No.
How do you get that?
Well, if you are in the position of needing to call police from time to time, you sometimes learn that number. And, for example, businesses who need to call police for a response from time to time will have that number. The advantage, council member, of calling that number directly as opposed to 911 is the way it works is sometimes if you dial 911, you may get CHP responding when you want FPD.
I understand. Well, I think we ought to, I don't know this number, and I doubt that many people do know this number. I don't know, perhaps that should be publicized so that, because I have heard of delays going at 911, going to particularly outside of cities, and getting the information quickly to police is difficult.
That's right.
So it's something to consider, this number. I have a number that I can call the watch commander on a little card, but that's probably not what she called, was it?
No.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, too, as you say, the heat of the moment, often in war, in anything, is often by trying to answer too quickly and you don't have the facts, you guess, and so forth. I don't know. I presume that they went to St. Jude's Hospital for the 2 doctors. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. And
Did Kelly Thomas go to St. Jude's as well?
Originally.
Okay. Do you know if the police went the same time as Kelly Thomas did?
No.
Okay. Now.
I do know the answer is no. Just
Okay. All right. As far as the injuries, also the time of the night that they went over there, I mean, if you think you got a fractured finger or something, you're not going to have the excitement of a possible fractured femur where you can lose a liter of blood in a matter of minutes in the soft tissues. So I don't know when they went over, when they were examined by a doctor, when an x-ray was taken, and many times reports from x-rays are not accurate until a radiologist has read it. That is the official reading. And the radiologist is not going to come in for a possible fractured finger. In most cases, he would get it the next morning. So it's easy to see how misinformation comes out in the heat of the battle and so forth. You're right. I think you've stated. Do not give misinformation. Only give what you know and say, please, we will give you more that will be accurate when we have it.
I'm not going to get into a discussion with somebody as trained as you are in the medical arts, but I think we're on the same page, and that is really, it's preferable to wait, make sure it's right before it's disseminated.
It's the same way with EKGs. You can have a physician looking at EKGs, not very knowledgeable, and he knows something about it, but he's not going to make a real sharp diagnosis until a cardiologist, an expert, makes that reading on it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Don, do you have any questions?
I have a brief comment. Mr. Janaka, I want to thank you for your effort to clarify those points. They were issues that were greatly publicized and people wondering who was right, who was wrong. I hope the information you provided us tonight will clarify all of that. And I am sure that the department will take your recommendations as far as perhaps establishing policy and so forth into consideration. But that's probably in the future, which we will know by the time you give your next report.
I look forward to that, sir.
I want to thank you for your efforts so far, and I look forward to the finished report before I really have a lot of comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few. One of the things that I was interested in hearing about is not only your remarks, but your recommendations. And again, to the Kelly Thomas family, we are deeply sorry for this tragedy, and all of these things needed to be vetted not only for the public, but for the council to really understand exactly what happened. And this does paint a picture, but on the recommendations, particularly on the photo, you recommended that we really look at that policy in the future. And can you just, again, clarify exactly what you would recommend in that going forward?
Essentially what I'd recommend is something, because right now you have nothing. So, this is something that needs to be thought about, needs to be vetted. The competing concerns need to be raised. The law is that the department and the city has a lot of discretion about whether or not to release booking photos. In larger departments, that discretion is used quite a bit. For example, if it's a celebrity, sometimes the booking photo is not disclosed because the only reason the media apparently wants it is because it's a celebrity. If it's somebody nefarious and somebody that has committed allegedly significant crimes, then the booking photo is generally released. But my point is not so much what should be in the policy, but there should be some thought about developing a policy, because really, if you are doing things on the fly or making things up ad hoc, then you end up running into issues like this and creating controversies where you don't need to. So I have indicated in my report, Mayor, some of the concerns or issues that I think should be discussed when that policy is developed. But I'm certainly willing to work with whoever you designate or the police department designates to create a vibrant policy.
You know, and I would expect that we would want to have very specific details on the way, and not only on ways that we want to move forward as far as policy direction, but what other cities do as well. And because we do walk that fine balance between the public wanting information, the media, and also protecting, in this case, a victim, and making sure that the family is involved in that decision. But the second recommendation was under, in essence, giving out information as far as, in essence, the hospital. Do you want to speak a little bit more?
Yeah, and this one is, it's hard to write policy as to the second one, but it really is, I think maybe as a mission statement or as a policy statement on release of information, a couple things. One is to do your best, do your darndest to make sure that that initial information is accurate. And two, if it's not, you've got to find a way to disseminate the corrected information broadly, whether that means even putting it on the department's website. There has to be a way to get that information out, rather than just responding as subsequent questions come in and say, well, you know, when I said X, it really turns out to be Y. I think it needs to be a broader response than that.
And as you know, I highly support that. That was one of my, in essence, disconnects with our chief of police at that time, that in essence he did not come out at any time during that period and correct information that we knew, or in this case that we've just been told was not correct. That would have, I think, definitely made a difference at that point. Do we have any other comments?
Mr. Giannacco, as far as injuries are concerned, with the new medical laws that are in place, much of that information is very private and probably shouldn't be released anyway.
That's the issue as well, is that there are privacy interests with regard to the officers, with regard to others, and that information is very, has to be very carefully vetted before it is released.
Right. And then the other issue, perhaps I've got more knowledge on. Generally speaking, if someone asks for a booking photo, they've been booked. The person's been booked, and they're asking for that photograph of that arrest, and obviously that wasn't the case here. And I think that's
precisely, and that's the distinction, Councilman.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it looks.
If I may.
Yes.
Mr. Giannacco, I did mean to inquire as to the nature of that arrest in 2009. What was he arrested for?
Trespassing and violating a previous restraining order.
Okay. And the second question, between either the city manager or you, are we going to be provided with a written summary of this portion of the investigation?
Yes, sir.
Listing facts, analysis, and findings?
It will be as I just discussed them, but in a little more detail and a little more coherence, probably, since I wrote it instead of said it. Yes.
All right, I think we are done with our questions and comments from the council. So what we will be doing now is Mr. Giannacco will be exiting and meeting whoever would like to speak with him out in the parking lot. And we'll go ahead and take about a 3-minute recess here, just so that we can have anybody who would like to leave at this point.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very informative. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, community.
Convene. We're going to go ahead and reconvene. Again, before we start our public comments, these comments are going to be made only on this item. We will have regular public comments at our 6:30 session. And just to remind you, the format's a little bit different tonight. We will be recessing to go into closed session at 6 o'clock. So we're looking for our first 5 speakers.
We have seats reserved at the front, too, at the first 5 would like to come up and sit.
Speakers 1 through 5. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. My name is Barry Levinson, longtime Fullerton resident. Just a brief comment. I stand here before this council, to be honest, somewhat disappointed by your actions today. The presentation by Mr. Giannacco was probably one of the most anticipated and important presentations in Fullerton's long history. Yet a majority of this council, for whatever reason, chose a 4:30 p.m. time slot and not the usual 6:30 start for this presentation. After all, the city and its people have been through. To move up this presentation 2 full hours, wherein many citizens would not be able to attend due to work and their family commitments, in my opinion, is not good government. As far as Mr. Giannacco's comments, at first blush, I thought they were very good and well thought out. My only concern was he basically answered 4 simple questions, and it took him 7 months. If I were a member of council, I would question why it took 7 months to get information that probably could have been presented to the community and the council within a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Erin Lewis, a resident in Fullerton. I really like Giannacco's report. I believe that it did clear up a lot of misinformation going on through the residents here in Fullerton. A couple things that I wanted to talk about were the person who phoned dispatch obviously is somebody within the city who possibly has a business and has that number to dispatch, because I can probably ask pretty much everybody in this audience, and probably 98% of them don't have that phone number. So we know that it had to have come from a business, and I hope that we find that out, and I hope that that person that made the call and said what she said is having nightmares for the rest of her life, because a man was killed. And also regarding the booking photo, I believe that there is a booking photo that night, and that is the one that Ron Thomas took at the hospital. That was Kelly's booking photo for that night. And that photo, the media should have used, and not the Fullerton Police Department issuing a 2009 booking photo of Kelly. I know it was a horrific photo. I can't even look at it myself. I did, and whenever it comes up, it just makes me sick. And I really look forward to Giannacco's further report on other areas. And I hope that the Fullerton Police Department does take Giannacco's recommendations on some of the things that he did speak of. I'm not sure if people understand that we are in the end of February, and California, Southern California, has 25 officer-involved shootings right now. And I believe that something needs to happen, and I implore the residents citizens of Southern California and all over California to fight this. We need to change the Officer Bill of Rights. We need to take away their right to use lethal force on people. There has to be a better way. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 3. 3.
Good evening. This all meeting privately with Mr. Janako prior to this meeting. We are completely in sync with each other and agree with each other on all issues thus far. I have talked with him before, and as far as justice for Kelly, I think we're on the right track. I really do. The next step, when these reports come out, for me, excuse me, it's tough.
Let's take your time.
No 3 minutes? All kidding aside, we the people worldwide are watching Dan Hughes. These folks will be protected by the Officers' Bill of Rights. Everything's going to come out eventually. The video, all the evidence, it's all going to be there. But we really, really want to know what this one man and his sole responsibility is going to do. I've talked with Dan many times. He knows how I feel about everything, including him. And even though we agree on a lot of things and we actually get along, from time to time I remind him, and he knows, it was his officers that murdered my son. But he's also the one to determine what's going to happen to the 4 on admin leave. So we'll all be watching. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have speakers 4 and 5? I don't see them sitting up front.
I'm Zach Moore. I am 18 years old, and I live in Brea. If it's an official job, Jones, if it's an official job, yeah, they will get tested and for a fractured finger. But if they don't have a job, or if they don't care, then they want to get fractured. They want to get tested, you know. And let's see. But you're right. Yeah, I already said that. I have, or used to have, friends that look like street people, and they know that I know that the chief of police later after life, later in life.
It's okay.
I'm nervous.
That's okay.
Later in life, they will when they get their records cleared, the chief of police will look at those people and hire them. Because they know the streets, they know all around the alleyways and stuff like that. And I just, get the record cleared, yeah. And what I also want to say is that for the youth out there, you remember it was like Jones being youth in Texas, you know, riding a horse and stuff? A big old cigar, man. big old cigar and chewing tobacco. I got some right here, actually, man. Yeah, but I just think we just get misguided or misdirected somehow, and it just tears us apart, and we got to build it back up. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
The speakers 6 through 10 want to come up and sit. You can be queued up for the next speaker. No, you're next.
Put my glasses on. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and City Council, everybody. Let me put my glasses on. I just wanted to say, as limited as that report was from Mr. Janako, I'm glad to see things moving forward. I wanted to take a shout out to, I don't know, I think the people responsible for bringing this, getting us this far, at least for the independent review report, and that would be Kelly's Army and all the supporters of, you know, the whole issue that happened with Kelly Thomas, not to mention Fullerton's future. We've learned a lot from that site itself, and I did especially, but I also wanted to mention that it seems there was one of the issues that Janako brought up. It was some misinformation given, and in summary, I'll make this quick. It seems like there was deliberate misinformation given because somebody was guilty, plain and simple. The only reason I think this information was because of FPD knowing what their guys did wrong and just not handling it properly. Seems to be painfully obvious. I'm sure they'll be addressing those questions, i.e., why were the police officers left on duty for 4 or 5 weeks after all this, et cetera, et cetera. That's to come another day. Again, my hat's off to everything. I'm glad to see things are moving forward. Again, a big shout out to Kelly's Army and Fullerton's future.
Thank you.
Hello. I don't even know what to say about Janako's report. I mean, I'm a little bit confused because that picture obviously was not Kelly Thomas. Like, it wasn't. His father knows it wasn't him, and we know it wasn't him. And, you know, we can go ahead and we can blame this all on Sellers like we want to or whatever, but the bottom line is Goodrich just told a lot of lies. He's lied straight to my face, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I mean, this is sickening. This is ridiculous. And, you know, had you guys just, the three of you, just come forward and said, you know, hey, you know, we've got something dramatic going on in our city. We're going to work together to get this through. You know, you guys would have still been able to keep a lot of other things from under the rug, because ever since this whole thing started, now I'm all up in the Kool-Aid when it comes to water, when it comes to every little thing that we're doing. And you know what? It's sickening. And I mean, I'm trying so hard to stick by you guys, to do what I can. I mean, some of you, to do what I can, but every day there's something new that comes up that's just wrong. And so now we are going to clear Kelly's name, right? I mean, okay, so you guys can't talk to me about this either, but we need to clear Kelly's name. We need to do that. We need, like, a public apology to the Thomas family and to the city of Fullerton and its residents, because it's not fun. We've been here week after week after week after week, praying and begging and doing whatever it is we can do, and we've got to do something. I mean, I know we pay Janako, so he's here to make the city look good. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter who we hire, what we do. We see what we see, and what we see is dirty. And it's not going to stay that way. It doesn't matter how long I have to work on the city, whether I live in the city or not. I'm going to love it until the day I die, and I'm going to work as hard as I can. I want Lily to be able to roller skate down the street someday and look around and say, I love this city, just like I did when I was a kid. I loved this city so much. And, you know, we can go to the beach, we can go to the snow, you know, everything you need is right here. It's a beautiful city. And for what you guys have done to downtown Fullerton alone in the last 10 years is sickening. I mean, if we could just do something to work together, I keep asking you guys, we need to do that, because united we stand, divided we fall. So I hope that in the next few weeks, before Janako's next report, that we do clear Kelly's name and that we do get a public apology out to the Thomas family, because I don't think that's been done. I mean, maybe individually, but as far as the city's concerned, we owe them an apology. We really do, and you guys definitely do, so please, man up.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I guess a couple things in regards to Mr. Janako and his report. I guess since the city paid for his report, when somebody hires me to write a report for them, I'm telling you what my slant is going to be. It's going to be on who gives me the $70,000. I'm not trying in any way to take away from his report, but we have to understand that he is a private law firm hired by our city to see what's going on. In regards to his saying that the spirit of the report and the recommendation, sir, the spirit of our report cost us city $70,000. Again, I'm really not trying to detract from his work. In regards to him saying or insinuating that there was no policy in our Fullerton Police Department in regards to a public information officer who also has his role in the police union, we're not really sure what his slant is. We would like a public information officer that has no ties with the union, so then maybe possibly we can squash that. In regards to his recommendations, I have done a lot of research on Mr. Janako, and granted his reports are stellar and his recommendations are great, but the implementation of those recommendations are pretty close to zero. I figure that if Dan, I know the task at hand for you is gotta be amazing, incredible. And I'm hoping that the report and the recommendations that he makes, that I hope that you take the plan of corrections that you guys are willing to take and post immediately. So maybe you can possibly restore some faith that we have, you know, in you guys. Because seriously, if we have to depend on our friends and blogs to realize what's going on and we're not getting accurate information from the police department, I mean, we're only left to speculate. God, I'm really nervous right now. I guess the only thing I have to say is to the good police officers out there, if you don't step up, your silence is consent.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything he said, you know, the guy, you know, we already know everything that happened. And somebody was outside saying right now, one of the news guys going, what is Kelly need to have his name cleared? You guys had somebody walking through a parking lot with a backpack. All the homeless people have backpacks. It's July 5th, all right? It's summertime out here. It's 15, 16 degrees outside. Everyone has backpacks, so you guys grabbed someone named Kelly. How do you know there was somebody else out there in the parking lot named Kelly? So you guys didn't find no drugs on him. There was no alcohol. There was none in his system. But this man was beaten to death by 6 murderers, not cops, because all cops are not bad. This man was beaten to death. And you're like, oh, man. And, you know, man, I have you guys, when we have the media out there and they ask, like, the stupidest questions, maybe we ask you guys stupid questions, but the man was beaten to death. You guys have it on video. And all of you say you didn't see the video. We know that some of you have seen the video. We need the video out there. And who's the girl that called from the slide bar? We'd like, what's her name? You know, how is she feeling these days after she had a man beaten to death for walking through a parking lot during the summer with his shirt off in a backpack? All he was doing was sitting down. People knew down there. Everyone says all he ever did was ask for a cigarette and pet their dog. He never asked him for no money. Oh, man. You know, and then you guys are sitting there saying that you guys got to start looking at this so it doesn't happen again. It should have never even happened in the beginning. All right? Oh, man. You know, handle it, take care of it. And all the cops, not the murderers all of them need to be prosecuted. That's not Ramos. I read in the paper that Ramos was so exhausted that he was at Kelly's feet, holding his feet because he was so exhausted from the beating.
Hello, what does that tell you right there? So he beat him so bad he had to go hold his feet while everybody else is beating him. They all need to be prosecuted. If that was me, you guys saw me on the streets right now and I was beating somebody up, I bet I'd go to 6 to 7 months or a year. You guys need to handle your people. And it's not all of you. You know, it's not you guys. You guys didn't murder him. It's not you guys. You guys should have spoke up, but you're not allowed to talk about certain things. I understand that. That's why we're here, the Kelly's Army people. But you guys need to handle all of those officers that you call officers. I don't call them officers. The murderers need to be prosecuted. So handle it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sorky.
Yes. Hi, Samara.
Samara Mohegan. As I say, my husband is a police officer. I have my speech already made since yesterday. I worked the whole night, and now I had to train it. Why? Because Fullerton Police is making him a favor that they say I'm not allowed to come here.
Samara, are you going to speaking on the Kelly Thomas? Because that's you need to speak on that right now, Kelly Thomas.
Yeah, that's what I want to tell, because I want to speak about Kelly Thomas, but I don't want the police come and arrest me just because I'm here.
Right now, you can speak on the Kelly Thomas.
Without being arrested.
Right now, you can speak, Samara.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. That's your worker, so I hope it worked. Regarding to Kelly Thomas, Miss John, you say you are a doctor. How do you know those police officers didn't break those bombs before they meet Kelly? Do you have any proof about it?
We're not going to engage with the public up here, Dr. Jones.
Okay, that's something that doesn't make sense, because they can have those injuries before they had the altercation with Kelly. So all these months, when this cycle is going to stop? We just keep getting corruption for Fullerton, and we don't get answers. We have months and months asking for help, begging you for answers. And today, what we got was pretty much nothing. All these months in the investigation, we just been told what we already know. What the policies are being changing. We don't know. We don't have a knowledge about that. So I think it should be another independent review, because this one, to me, it didn't have any substantial. It's just plain things that we already didn't know. And when you asked to Mr. Tinaco about some stuff, he said, I don't know. How come he doesn't know after all these months? How many months we need to wait? So they can keep covering and covering and covering. And I don't know who's in charge, maybe Pat McKinley, maybe the mayor, but someone needs to keep pushing so we can get answers and resolve the case. That's the main point. We want solutions. We don't want just put a bandage for a few months and then come back again and put another bandage. We want a solution, but a solution that stays stable, like a rock, not just keep coming here, because I know you guys get tired of seeing us, especially me, because my English is pretty bad. And
thank you, Samara. Thank you.
Marlene, you're next, and then we have 3 more speaker cards, and that's all we have up here.
After the 3 speakers, we will be closing the public comments on this item.
Okay, good evening. I'm really shaky right now. I've been nervous. Didn't really sleep last night thinking about what was going to be revealed today. But I think I had myself more worked up than I needed to be, because basically what I heard, well, I'm glad that we heard that Kelly did not break any of the officers' bones. I'm glad that we heard that today. I am incredibly happy to hear that. I don't understand why it took $70,000 and all this time for us to hear that. We had a little party out front on Saturday. It was the Chief Sellers Cowardly Retirement Party right outside. We planned that, just a couple of us regular people on Facebook couple of weeks, maybe? 1 week. Yeah, a week. You know, in our spare times of having a job and having kids and doing this and going to the water board meetings and going to everything, because we're everywhere. We're looking at everything. So everything that needs to be changed is going to get changed now. We've got nothing better to do than make things better. We put that out there to come join us, come out and say goodbye to somebody that's taking $150,000 and leaving without really even saying goodbye to us. I don't understand why something like that hasn't already happened for Kelly. I don't understand what's going on up here every day, just like Christina said. So many people have looked at Christine and said, oh my God, she's too much. She's right on. She's exactly right about everything she's saying. People can think she's out there. I back her up 1,000%. She's absolutely right about the water problem. She's right about the Kelly problem, not Kelly problem, the tragedy, the horrible murder. Those police officers were injured while they were beating him to death. I hope the American people are hearing what I'm saying. And this isn't just happening here, it's happening in a lot of other cities, and what we're going to do here in Fullerton is going to change everything across the board. I'm so sorry to Kelly's family. Once again, I'm really sorry. And thank you to Kelly's Army for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, council members, city staff, and...
You want to speak right into that microphone?
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Acting Chief of Police, Dan Hughes. I heard Michael Janaco's comments. And, you know, he's right on. There are problems here. And I've had to endure them through the police department dealing with another issue. And it's kind of like a carbon copy of a homeless man. Ignore it, let it, hope it goes away, ignore the person, treat him like dirt, push him around, and, you know, just do what you want. That isn't going to solve the problems here. It's not going to solve the problem with this man that was killed. What's going to solve the problem is you're going to have to get some of those people in the police department to retire. You're not going to be able to fix an old school cop. They have to go. It's not going to do you any good to continue the way you're continuing. The issue that I was dealing with, I got 200 lists of 200 calls or better since 2010. And I've spoken to the people at these locations. They have the same opinion that these people in here have of the police department, that they, bottom line, they don't care, and they're treated like meat, like dirt, like pieces of meat. And they're actually afraid. I had a friend that was yelled at by one of your officers, Mr. Hughes, when he witnessed somebody urinate in front of his daughter. And you know what? I've been treated the same way. I know a lot of these people in here have the same frustrations. There needs to be some drastic change. Personally, I have nothing against you, Hughes. But I do have the fact that there needs some experience in this city to run this city, because it's not going to change. You have a lot of lack of experience, and that needs to change. That means some people may get reduced in rank in their job, not only in the police department, but in planning, building, everywhere, and bring in experience, because there is no experience here. That's one of the biggest problems with the city, lack of experience. The other problem is, and Mr. Janaco pointed this out, there needs to be policies in place by the Assistant Chief, Dan Hughes, to address problems. There are no policies. I found that out when I picked this up. Somebody was supposed to come down to the counter to see me. That didn't happen. And this was published in the paper. Open police department. I haven't seen that. And the other people that I speak of from this issue that I have here haven't seen it either. I don't think anybody's seen it. This needs to be done the right way. Open police department. Not put in the paper and closed. If this is what's being done, I don't see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janie, and I want to start off by saying that Ron and Kathy, Kelly Thomas's family, have broken hearts for the rest of their days. And that's broken hearts shall never mend. And it just kind of comes across, I just want to clear something up that Janaco said, that the media had something to do with the story getting out about broken bones. It was Mr. Goodrich that said in his own voice that our officers received broken bones. He said it. I called Mr. Goodrich and I asked him, why did you say that?
And you know what he said? He told me he blamed St. Jude, that the St. Jude made a mistake. No, what happened here was deception. And why was there deception? Because there's guilt. 6 officers had a responsibility. One of them could have stopped it, and they didn't. And there's a life gone now. And as far as Kelly Thomas, he didn't steal the backpack. He probably found it. And I'm just upset by this. I mean, there's broken hearts here. Why does it take $70,000 to figure out common sense? You know, really. That's free. Common sense is free. And it took away my belief in our police department, and I'm scared of them now. I don't have any faith in our police department. 6 officers got out of control, and that's common sense. And I'm not worried about broken bones of the officers. If they have broken bones, it's because they created them themselves by beating Kelly. Shame on them. And so, you know, I'm just sorry to them, and all you guys need to do is say sorry to that family. And you are going to be proud of the police officers who do this, and I don't care what report comes out. Bottom line is not one of them stopped it. And that's something to be ashamed of. That badge is supposed to represent protection, and they completely failed. And they have broken hearts now. It will never be mended. And that just breaks my heart.
Thank you. We're not going to talk from the audience.
Number 13.
Jimmy, we're not talking from the audience.
My 3 minutes. It's important.
No, you did have your 3 minutes. But you can come back at the 6:30 time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Joe Imbriano, and I was here last August on that warm summer evening, and it wasn't a very pleasant one. I'd like to think that we're heading in the right direction. I do feel safer now. We've changed the chief. The majority of the residents are watching what's going on here. A lot of people around the world are watching what's going on here. And I would hope that all that are involved will do the right thing. I think we're still splitting hairs. I think we're trying to get out of this thing. It's pretty evident what happened. The man was electrocuted and bludgeoned to death. On that summer evening, he wasn't convicted of any crime. He was executed in the streets by agents of the state. That is exactly what happened to him. You can call it what you want, and you can say what you want, but the bottom line is he was a walking, breathing human being, and Dr. Jones, he had 75,000 miles of circulatory system in his body before life was snuffed out of him. I want you to understand that we're all human beings, and we're all created in the image of God, and we all have value. And what has happened in this city demonstrates the callousness of which that I am petrified to think that it's pervading law enforcement throughout the country. But what I'm hearing is that it does. And I don't know where the American people can begin, except by where the people in this city have begun, and that is to stand up and speak. And there is a select group of people in this city that has the courage to come out and speak their mind and stand up for what they believe is right. It takes a lot of courage to stand on a street corner when some of the people are driving by flipping you off with their tinted windows, and the officers that are on the streets are, you know, outgunning us by 300 to 1 with the firepower that they have as American citizens. It's rather intimidating to stand for what we believe in, and that is decency, honesty, and openness in our government, and transparency in our government, and government by the people and for the people. And Mr. Whitaker, I commend you, sir. I really do. I don't have much to say about anybody else sitting up here behind this, behind these name plaques. Okay. So in closing, I would just like to say that it is never too late to do the right thing. I've heard that said many times. I'll say it again. And there is no forgiveness without repentance. Thank you.
Thank you. So our last speaker. Okay, we will be recessing into closed session, and we will be back out at 6:30.